Welcome to the Woman Aesthetic Podcast. Join us in seeking deeper meaning and striving to live fully in our womanhood. Welcome to the Woman Aesthetic Podcast. I'm your host, Anna. Today, we're unpacking one of my favorite quotes from Fulton Sheen on the dynamic between men and women. I love that this quote speaks to the importance of women's actions and characters, and we'll discuss what that means for relationships and how women can elevate not just themselves, but the world around them. So here is the quote. When a man loves a woman, he has to become worthy of her. The higher her virtue, the more noble her character, the more devoted she is to truth, justice, goodness, the more a man has to aspire to be worthy of her. The history of civilization could actually be written in the terms of the level of its women. In this quote, Fulton Sheen challenges us to think deeply about the role of virtue, not only in love, but in shaping society itself. So right off the bat, the quote positions love as a force of transformation. The first line already calls a man to action. So to become suggests that he has to change somehow. And the word worthy suggests he has to measure up to a level. So to be with this woman, he has a choice in front of him. She doesn't make him change. He has to freely choose to change. The steady virtue, the holding of the line, puts a dilemma in front of the man. He can go on living like he has, or he can have this woman, but he has to become more than he is. So love calls this man to go on a quest to defeat his own weakness, to become worthy of the woman. This is a tale as old as time. We have the classic example of the knight who has to defeat the dragon to reach the princess. The true love doesn't pull someone down. It inspires them and calls them to be better. So the virtue is a standard that calls for respect. When a woman embodies truth and justice and goodness, she sets a high bar that encourages those around her to strive for the same. In this quote, Fulton Sheen implies that there are degrees of virtue, so we should strive for the highest degree. We should propel each other to higher degrees of virtue. And this isn't about arrogance or pride. It's about knowing your God-given worth and refusing to settle for less. And history shows that when women prioritize virtue and dignity, societies thrive. When women are reduced to mere objects or commodities, cultures decline. There is no period in history that's perfect. And as we know, throughout history and different cultures, there are ways that women have thrived, and there are many ways in which that was not and still not the case. However, I want to focus on the point that when virtue is upheld, we see clear aspects of societal health. So let's discuss the couple of examples. We have medieval Europe, when many noble women, such as Saint Margaret of Scotland, modeled virtue and piety, becoming spiritual and moral anchors for their communities. Their influence fostered stability in families, and it encouraged charitable works that uplifted society, including the establishment of hospitals and of schools. Now, the contrasting example, and one that we're all familiar with, is the decline of ancient Rome. So during the last years of the Roman Empire, the moral fabric of society began to erode, and it was partially due to the commodification of women. So women were often seen as tools of pleasure or political alliance rather than an individual with dignity and virtue. And the impact of this was the normalization of this widespread exploitation, such as prostitution, which diminished respect for women and it undermined family structures. So this loss of familiar stability weakened the social cohesion needed to support the empire's complex systems. And the outcome of this is, historians often citing this as moral decline, alongside with other factors as contributing to the empire's eventual fall. Now, one lesson we can learn is in every instance, societies that objectify women lose the stabilizing and the nurturing contributions that women offer. And this disregard for women's dignity correlates with family breakdowns. So, women, as bearers and nurturers of life, are central to familial and societal structures. And with the family being the bedrock of society, women's devaluation disrupts this natural order. The second would be moral decay. So, treating women as commodities reflects and reinforces a broader moral decline. And the third would be social instability. So, exploitation and inequality sow unrest and disorder, and it undermines societal resilience. I kind of want to scale back a bit and talk about the power of virtuous women in relationships. So when a woman chooses to live with virtue, it not only benefits her, but it challenges those around her to live with greater integrity. A man who truly loves a woman sees her virtue as something to honor and not to diminish. And women should never apologize for expecting respect and commitment and integrity in their relationships. We want our relationships to center around true love and respect for the individuals. And while we're on the topic, I truly believe it's worth discussing what true love means. So, true love isn't a fleeting feeling or an affection or a passion. True love is an intentional, transformative act. So Thomas Aquinas says that to love is to will the good of another. Now, we know Aquinas built this on Aristotle's definition, but he elevated it through a theological lens. So Aquinas believed love isn't merely an emotion, but a deliberate and a divine action, and it's aimed at achieving the ultimate good of another, which is their union with God. And in this way, we are called to have love for ourselves and for one another. And looking at this definition of love helps explain why there's so much brokenness and hurt in the world. A while back, someone told me this quote, a woman's heart should be so hidden in God that a man has to seek him to find her. So a virtuous woman inspires a man to grow in faith and discipline and character. Ultimately, in the end, the man has to make the choice to become better and uphold virtue or not. And, many are familiar with Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, and at first, he is proud and aloof, but after Elizabeth rejects him because of his pride and the actions that follow it, he performs a great act of humility and generosity. He saves Elizabeth's family from scandal without expecting anything in return, and this action is contrary to his initial prideful demeanor, so something else, his love for Elizabeth, inspires him to act differently, and consequently, it sparks a deeper affection towards him from Elizabeth. So, this is just one example of many that we see running through literary works, and this is a wonderful thing that we are seeing, how virtuous women are emerging as strong driving forces for the good that's running through civilization itself. And in one of my previous episodes, Sophia Cutterback and I discussed the role and the idea of women as heart of society. And here is the thing. Women have always been at the heart of civilization, whether that's nurturing families or that's leading communities or influencing culture. Societies that honor women's dignity tend to thrive, while those that exploit and degrade women suffer moral and social decline. So we have seen this throughout history, and we continue to see this in present day. We had and we still have women leaders in movements of justice and reform, such as we know Mother Teresa of Calcutta, amongst others, who embody truth and goodness and have shown us that Virtuous women have the power to change families and workplaces and communities for the better. And that begins by understanding your own God-given dignity. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says that a virtue is a habitual and a firm disposition to do the good. It allows the person not only to perform good acts, but to give the best of himself. So the virtuous person tends toward the good with all his sensory and spiritual powers, and he pursues the good and he chooses it in concrete actions. So God created you good and worthy of a good and a well-ordered life. And the big issue today is what people deem to be good. If truth itself is approached as something that's subjective instead of objective, what chance does the good have? So let's not shy away from the objective truth, because that is what will ultimately order virtue and influence our relationships with ourselves and with others for the better. And whether that's in friendships or in family or romantic relationships, don't settle for less than respect and mutual encouragement. So let's encourage men in our lives to grow by modeling the same qualities that we seek. And that's how we dress, and that's how we speak and act. It sends a message to the world and to others about what we value. So let our choices reflect our faith and our integrity, and don't allow modern societal pressures of beauty standards or material success distract us from what truly matters, which is focusing and upholding truth and beauty and goodness. And ultimately, our worth doesn't come from others, it comes from God. So let's trust Him to guide our relationships and our roles in shaping the world. This quote by Fulton Sheen reminds me of an incredible influence that women have, not just in love, but in the shaping of entire civilizations. When a woman commits to virtue, she doesn't just elevate herself, she elevates everyone around her. So my challenge to you is this: let's live boldly in our dignity, set high standards, not out of pride, but out of faith in the goodness that God created within us. And never forget that we have the power to inspire greatness. And that's not just in the men who love us, but in the world around us. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or a loved one. Let's start a conversation about what it means to live with virtue and to inspire greatness in others. Follow me on Instagram for more content celebrating the beauty and the purpose of women, and subscribe to The Woman Aesthetic for future episodes. Until next time.